Former Lieutenant Commander Ryan Garrett stood on the dock of Pensacola Beach Marina at 0630 hours, preparing diving equipment for another weekend recreational charter, a significant professional step down from his 15 years as a Navy SEAL conducting high-stakes combat diving operations across multiple theaters. At 41 years old, Ryan worked as a commercial diving instructor, teaching recreational divers basic skills: how to equalize pressure during descent, check gauge readings, maintain buoyancy control, and execute safe ascents. He'd left the teams 2 years ago after a diving accident during a training exercise in San Diego Bay left him with permanent nerve damage in his left hand, specifically damage to the ulnar nerve, creating constant tingling, reduced grip strength, and occasional loss of fine motor control that made handling weapons and executing precision operations impossible by SEAL standards. The Navy had medically retired him with full benefits, disability compensation rated at 40%, and commendations acknowledging 15 years of exemplary service, including 3 combat deployments. But Ryan felt hollowed out, a man whose entire identity had been constructed around high-stakes special operations, now teaching tourists how to avoid nitrogen narcosis and panic responses. The psychological impact had been more devastating than the physical injury. Ryan experienced PTSD that manifested specifically as panic attacks in enclosed spaces, a particularly cruel manifestation for someone whose career had involved submarine operations, underwater vehicle insertions, and confined space breaching operations. The panic attacks had started 3 months after his medical retirement, triggered initially by elevators and gradually expanding to any environment that restricted movement or vision. His VA psychiatrist had diagnosed claustrophobia-related PTSD and prescribed medications that helped manage symptoms but couldn't eliminate the fundamental problem. Ryan's nervous system now interpreted confined spaces as life-threatening situations requiring immediate escape. His only companion was Duke, an 8-year-old Belgian Malinois who'd been Ryan's K-9 partner for 3 deployments spanning maritime interdiction operations, coastal reconnaissance, and underwater explosive detection missions. Duke had served as a specialized water detection dog, one of fewer than 20 Belgian Malinois trained specifically for underwater operations by the Navy's Military Working Dog program. When Ryan retired under medical discharge, Duke retired simultaneously under the Military Working Dog Adoption program that prioritized placement with handlers when operationally feasible. Belgian Malinois were elite among military working dogs, smaller, more agile, and more adaptable than German Shepherds, possessing exceptional intelligence and work drive that made them overwhelmingly preferred for special operations. Duke had been trained using specialized K-9 diving equipment developed for military working dogs, including custom buoyancy vests, underwater communication systems adapted for canine physiology, and detection protocols specifically designed for maritime environments. The dog still exhibited detection behaviors during their daily beach walks along Pensacola's white sand shores, alerting to metallic debris, scanning water surfaces with focused intensity, maintaining operational vigilance that had no practical outlet in civilian recreational contexts. Ryan supplemented his diving instructor income by conducting weekend recreational shipwreck dives for tourists along Florida's Panhandle coast. The area was littered with documented wrecks, fishing boats, pleasure craft, and occasional historical vessels that drew diving enthusiasts from across the southeast. Most sites were shallow, 30 to 50 feet, comprehensively documented in NOAA databases, and picked completely clean by decades of recreational divers and salvage operations. It was profoundly boring work compared to SEAL operations, but it paid reasonably well and kept Ryan in the water where his damaged left hand didn't matter as much as his extensive experience and professional training. On an overcast October morning, when cloud cover reduced surface visibility and created challenging diving conditions that would deter less experienced operators, Ryan was conducting a routine charter dive to a known fishing boat wreck approximately 3 miles offshore from Pensacola Beach. He had 6 clients aboard, 3 couples from Alabama celebrating an anniversary with adventure tourism. While conducting pre-dive sonar scanning to confirm the fishing boat's exact position and ensure no navigational hazards, Ryan's equipment picked up an anomaly that immediately activated his tactical assessment protocols. About 400 yards southwest of the planned dive site, the sonar showed a large metallic structure at 70 feet depth, significantly deeper and substantially larger than the 40-foot fishing boat they'd come to explore. Ryan's SEAL training engaged immediately. This wasn't on any of his nautical charts. It wasn't listed in NOAA's comprehensive wreck database that he referenced for all charter operations. Whatever was down there had either been missed by official maritime surveys or was deliberately excluded from public documentation for reasons unknown. Ryan made a tactical decision that his clients wouldn't understand, but his SEAL background demanded. Investigate the anomaly before word spread. He explained to his charter clients that he'd found a potentially more interesting wreck and would conduct a preliminary reconnaissance dive to assess safety and interest level before bringing them down. He anchored his vessel directly above the sonar anomaly and began preparing for descent. Then Ryan did something that would have shocked his charter clients if they'd known. He prepared Duke for diving using specialized K-9 diving equipment Ryan had purchased and modified after leaving the Navy. Ryan had trained Duke for recreational diving as therapy for both of them, keeping the dog's detection skills active, maintaining their operational partnership, and providing Duke with purpose that compensated for losing his military working dog identity. As Ryan and Duke descended through murky water with visibility reduced to approximately 15 feet by suspended sediment and algae bloom, Ryan's powerful diving flashlight caught the outline of something massive resting on the sandy bottom. A vessel approximately 150 feet long, largely intact, resting upright in what appeared to be remarkably preserved condition, considering its apparent age. The wreck was old. Ryan could determine that immediately from encrustation patterns showing decades of marine growth covering the hull, barnacle colonies indicating long-term stability, and coral formations suggesting the structure had been undisturbed for extended periods. But it wasn't ancient historical wreck from centuries past. The construction details suggested mid-20th century, probably 1940s through 1960s, based on hull design, welding patterns visible through marine growth, and what appeared to be mounted weaponry obscured by coral formations. The vessel's design suggested military origin, specifically naval patrol craft or coastal defense vessel, based on the hull's lines and visible armament. Ryan began systematically documenting the wreck using underwater photography equipment, taking comprehensive images of the hull structure, any visible identification markers, weapon systems, and distinctive features that would help maritime archaeologists identify the vessel's origin. That's when Duke exhibited behavior that stopped Ryan's documentation work cold. The Belgian Malinois was alerting with unmistakable body language. Rigid posture, despite the water's resistance, focused attention locked on a specific section of the wreck's stern hull, the exact same alert pattern Duke had used during explosive detection operations across 3 combat deployments. Ryan's tactical assessment engaged immediately. If Duke was alerting on this wreck using detection behaviors trained for underwater explosives and contraband, there was something present that triggered his operational conditioning. Could be unexploded ordnance still aboard after decades. Could be something else his training identified as significant. But Duke didn't produce false alerts. 8 years of operational history and dozens of successful detections proved his reliability absolutely. Ryan photographed the specific area Duke was focused on, documented the GPS coordinates with precision, noted the exact depth and position relative to known landmarks, and made the tactical decision to surface immediately. Something about this wreck violated normal patterns, and his SEAL training emphasized investigating properly before information became public and the site was compromised. Back on shore, after completing a shortened charter dive at the original fishing boat site to satisfy his paying clients, Ryan immediately contacted Dr. Sarah Chen, a maritime archaeologist at the University of West Florida's Archaeology Institute, who specialized in Gulf Coast shipwrecks and 20th century naval history. He showed her the underwater photographs and provided exact GPS coordinates of the anomalous wreck. Dr. Chen's reaction was immediate shock mixed with professional excitement. That's not in any official database. I've personally reviewed every documented wreck in this sector for my research. Based on the hull design, welding patterns, and visible armament in your photographs, that could be a World War II-era patrol craft or possibly a Cold War-era coastal defense vessel. But there's absolutely no record of anything that size going down in that specific location. Ryan and Dr. Chen organized a proper archaeological dive expedition within 72 hours, assembling a small team including 2 graduate students specializing in underwater archaeology, a marine conservation specialist, and comprehensive documentation equipment, including underwater photogrammetry systems for creating detailed 3D models. During the second dive with Dr. Chen's team systematically documenting the site using professional archaeological protocols, Duke alerted again, this time to a sealed compartment near the wreck's stern section that appeared to have been deliberately closed and secured. The hatch showed corrosion consistent with decades of saltwater exposure, but maintained structural integrity, suggesting watertight design. Ryan used specialized tools to carefully open the corroded hatch without damaging potential historical artifacts or compromising site integrity. Inside the sealed compartment, remarkably preserved by the waterproof environment that had excluded marine organisms and sediment, a military-style watertight container marked with United States Navy insignia and classification stamps from the 1960s era. The team extracted the container with meticulous care, following archaeological protocols for artifact recovery and documentation. They brought it to the surface and transported it immediately to Dr. Chen's laboratory at the University of West Florida for controlled opening in an environment that would preserve any degradable materials. Opening the container in Dr. Chen's laboratory under controlled humidity and temperature conditions revealed contents that left Ryan speechless. Classified documents marked Top Secret with Department of Defense stamps, dated October 1962 through October 1963, detailing a covert naval operation during the Cuban Missile Crisis period. The documents described a patrol boat designated USS Vigilant conducting surveillance operations in the Gulf of Mexico during the height of Cold War tensions, specifically monitoring for Soviet submarine activity during the period when nuclear conflict seemed imminent. But the documentation revealed far more than routine patrol operations. Included in the container were handwritten operational logs describing a mission that went catastrophically wrong. An encounter with what sonar operators identified as a Soviet submarine operating in international waters, an unauthorized depth charge deployment executed by the commanding officer without proper authorization from higher command, and a catastrophic equipment failure that caused the USS Vigilant to sink with all crew members. The final entry, dated October 28, 1963, was written by the commanding officer, Lieutenant James Mackenzie, in increasingly shaky handwriting, suggesting he wrote while the vessel was taking water. 0342 hours. Sonar contact identified as probable hostile submarine based on acoustic signature matching Soviet diesel-electric boats. Contact maintaining position 12 miles from U.S. territorial waters. Given extreme tensions following Cuban Missile Crisis resolution and explicit orders to monitor for Soviet activity, made tactical decision to engage. 0356 hours. Deployed pattern of Mark 44 depth charges without proper authorization from ComSublant. Acting on combat instinct during crisis period when Soviet submarine presence could indicate renewed hostilities. 0401 hours. Sonar confirms target destroyed. No acoustic signature detected following explosions. Mission success by tactical assessment. 0407 hours. Catastrophic equipment failure in depth charge magazine. Premature detonation of remaining ordnance breached hull integrity below waterline. Taking water in multiple compartments. Damage control efforts failing. 0415 hours. Radio equipment damaged by explosion. Unable to transmit distress signal or position report. No one knows our current position. Vessel is sinking. If anyone finds this container, tell my crew's families, all 23 men, that we died serving our country during the most dangerous period in American history. Tell command we did what we believed was right to protect national security. Tell my wife, Margaret, I'm sorry I won't be coming home. Tell my children their father died doing his duty. Lieutenant James Mackenzie, Commanding Officer, USS Vigilant. Ryan's hands shook as he read the logs, his seal background providing context that civilian archaeologists might miss. This wasn't just a tragic shipwreck. This was evidence of an unauthorized military engagement during the Cuban Missile Crisis, a vessel that went down with highly classified information and 23 crew members whose families were almost certainly told they died in a routine training accident because the true circumstances couldn't be declassified without creating international incident. Dr. Chen contacted the Naval History and Heritage Command in Washington, D.C., which confirmed what Ryan had suspected from tactical analysis. USS Vigilant was officially listed as lost at sea during routine operations, October 1963. The 23 crew members were memorialized on Navy records as having died in service, but the specific details of the mission and sinking circumstances remained classified under national security protocols. The wreck's location had never been officially determined until Duke alerted to it 62 years after it sank. The critical turning point came when Navy officials contacted Ryan directly. They wanted the classified documents returned immediately, and they wanted the wreck's location kept classified for ongoing national security reasons related to Cold War operational security. Ryan refused with seal determination. 23 families have spent 62 years not knowing what really happened to their fathers, husbands, and sons. They deserve the complete truth. Lieutenant Mackenzie sealed those documents in a watertight container, hoping someone would eventually find them and tell the story he couldn't. We found them. We're telling that story. Ryan contacted families of USS Vigilant crew members through Navy veteran organizations, military genealogy databases, and direct outreach to addresses listed in Lieutenant Mackenzie's personal effects that had been preserved in the container. Within 2 weeks of beginning outreach, 9 families responded, children and grandchildren of the deceased crew members, all carrying the same inherited burden, believing for 6 decades that their loved ones died in routine accident when the truth involved classified combat action during one of the most dangerous moments in American history. When Ryan showed them Lieutenant Mackenzie's logs and the recovered classified documents, their decades-old grief transformed into something more complex. Pride that their family members had served during a critical national security mission, and organized demand that the Navy acknowledge the complete truth rather than maintaining classified silence. The families collectively petitioned the Department of Defense to declassify USS Vigilant's mission records and properly memorialize the crew with accurate service descriptions. The Navy initially refused, citing ongoing classification requirements related to Cold War operations and international sensitivities. But Ryan did something that forced unavoidable action. He contacted veteran advocacy organizations, including the Navy SEAL Foundation and major media outlets, with one powerful message. A Navy SEAL's K-9 partner found a shipwreck that's been missing for 62 years. The crew died during the Cuban Missile Crisis, conducting classified anti-submarine operations. Their families deserve to know the truth about what their loved ones were doing when they died. The media pressure, combined with congressional inquiries from representatives whose constituents included USS Vigilant crew families, forced a comprehensive Department of Defense review. After 6 months of evaluation involving Navy leadership, Department of Defense legal counsel, and State Department consultation regarding international implications, the Department of Defense declassified USS Vigilant's operational records. The declassified documentation revealed that the vessel had been conducting anti-submarine surveillance during the Cuban Missile Crisis when it engaged what sonar identified as a Soviet submarine. The depth charge deployment was unauthorized by command protocols but understandable given extreme tensions of October 1963, when nuclear war seemed imminent. The equipment malfunction was mechanical failure involving the depth charge magazine, not crew error or negligence. The crew died conducting a classified national security mission, protecting American interests during the most dangerous nuclear confrontation in history. The United States Navy updated the USS Vigilant Memorial at the Naval Academy, changing the official cause of loss from routine operations to combat operations during Cuban Missile Crisis period. The 23 crew members received posthumous recognition for their service during one of the most dangerous periods in American history, with their service records comprehensively updated to reflect accurate mission circumstances. Lieutenant James Mackenzie was posthumously awarded the Navy Cross, the Navy's second highest decoration for valor, for his decision to preserve comprehensive evidence of the mission and his crew's actions, despite knowing it might result in posthumous court-martial for the unauthorized depth charge deployment. His act of sealing the classified documents in a watertight container betting someone would eventually find the wreck and tell the story, was formally recognized as extraordinary integrity and moral courage. Ryan received formal written thanks from the Naval History and Heritage Command and the Secretary of the Navy, but no official financial reward. What he gained proved far more valuable personally. The families of USS Vigilant crew members collectively established a scholarship fund honoring the crew, with Ryan named as the fund's primary advisor based on unanimous family vote. The scholarship fund provided educational support specifically to children and dependents of service members who died in classified operations, honoring those whose service couldn't always be publicly acknowledged during their lifetimes due to national security requirements. Dr. Sarah Chen led a comprehensive archaeological documentation project of the USS Vigilant wreck site, creating detailed 3D photogrammetry models and historical analysis. The wreck was officially designated a protected military memorial site under federal law. No salvage operations permitted, but diving allowed for educational and memorial purposes under proper permits. Ryan began conducting specialized memorial dives for families of the crew members, bringing them to the site where their loved ones rested at 70 feet depth, allowing them to place memorial tributes, American flags in waterproof containers, and personal items, while finally saying goodbye to men who disappeared 62 years earlier, without explanation. 6 months after the discovery, Ryan and Duke participated in a formal ceremony at Arlington National Cemetery, where a new memorial section was dedicated specifically to the USS Vigilant crew. 9 families attended, some traveling from across the United States to finally see their fathers' and grandfathers' names properly memorialized with accurate service records reflecting their classified Cuban Missile Crisis operations. Duke, wearing his specialized diving vest adorned with military working dog insignia, sat beside the memorial with the same professional bearing and dignified posture he'd maintained during operational service. Children and grandchildren of the crew members approached the Belgian Malinois, thanking the combat dog whose underwater detection capabilities had finally brought truth to light after 6 decades. 1 year after finding the wreck, Ryan had transitioned professionally from commercial diving instructor to specialized maritime archaeology consultant, working with Force Blue, a non-profit organization of military veteran divers who documented shipwrecks, conducted marine conservation work, and applied military diving expertise to environmental protection. Duke continued to dive with Ryan regularly, his detection skills now applied to locating historical artifacts, mapping wreck sites, and identifying areas of archaeological significance. Together, they'd helped document 17 additional Gulf Coast wrecks, several containing items of substantial historical importance, including Civil War-era vessels and World War II training aircraft. A documentary filmmaker producing a film about USS Vigilant and the Cuban Missile Crisis asked Ryan the question that captured widespread public fascination. What made Duke alert to the USS Vigilant when hundreds of recreational divers had likely passed over that area during 6 decades without noticing the wreck or recognizing its significance? Ryan's answer became the narrative foundation of an award-winning documentary film about the Vigilant and her crew titled 70 Feet Down, The Secret of USS Vigilant. Duke was trained specifically to detect underwater explosives, ammunition, and contraband during maritime interdiction operations. The USS Vigilant went down with live ammunition stores, unexploded depth charges, and classified materials, All things that would trigger his detection training even 62 years after the vessel sank. But here's what matters most. Duke didn't alert because I commanded him to search. He alerted because military working dogs don't retire from detecting just because paperwork says they're medically discharged and their operational careers are over. He continued, detection dogs keep working, keep alerting, keep serving, because that's fundamentally who they are. It's not just training, it's identity. We were conducting a routine recreational tourist dive that day. Duke found a piece of forgotten history that completely rewrote 23 families' understanding of how their loved ones died and what they were doing during the most dangerous moment of the Cold War. Some missions don't have expiration dates or time limits. They just wait underwater for the right warrior and the right dog to stumble across them and refuse to swim past without investigating what doesn't belong. The shipwreck that had rested at 70 feet depth for 62 years, passed over by countless recreational divers, missed by official maritime surveys, forgotten by everyone except families who never stopped wondering what really happened, was found by a medically retired SEAL teaching tourist diving and discovered by a combat Belgian Malinois whose detection instincts never deactivated. Lieutenant Mackenzie's calculated gambit, sealing classified evidence in a watertight container and securing it in a compartment that might survive decades underwater, succeeded not through official Navy search operations or government investigation, but through the unpredictable intersection of routine charter diving, canine detection instinct, and one former SEAL operator's refusal to ignore what his canine partner was communicating mattered. 23 sailors, hidden beneath the Gulf of Mexico's surface for over 6 decades, finally received proper recognition, accurate memorialization, and historical acknowledgement because warriors recognize other warriors' sacrifices across generations, even across 62 years, even at 70 feet depth, even in wrecks that hundreds of divers swam past without seeing what a Belgian Malinois trained for underwater detection couldn't ignore.